we have Billy, pronouns he, him, from Texas. Billy's a theist, and Billy makes a statement: Forrest is wrong about abiogenesis.
Oh, goodness. Somebody ought to tell me.
This call is going to go great. I can tell.
Yeah. Haven't we? I believe we've talked before, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have. And since we've talked, I've done some research. And
have we talked about abiogenesis specifically?
No, I don't think we did talk about abiogenesis, but I've found myself every time I hear you talk about abiogenesis, I throw up in my mouth a little bit, because we are light years away from abiogenesis, dude. Like you kind of give the impression that we have a solid understanding of abiogenesis. No, we don't, dude. Like we are so far
I think
away
what's
from
more
abiogenesis
important is the fact that I'm so low in the frame. Why am I so low in the frame? What's going on with that?
Yeah, that's not cool.
I don't.
Yeah. Fix the frame.
Oh. I can't. I don't have controls over any of that. I'm just going to be down here on the fucking resting my chin on the lower third. So
you get down there, goddamn.
What I want to just like draw attention to right away, or I guess ask about, is that like the evidence that we have supporting abiogenesis and like pointing in that direction is very solid, and it does point in that direction pretty like I hesitate to use the word conclusively on anything, but like as conclusive as something can be, we're about there. And so like, sure, we've never like created a new cell in a lab, but that's as ridiculous of a thing to ask for at this moment as asking to watch a human evolve from a monkey in a lab. That just doesn't really work. And so like, what I want to understand from you is like, when I talk about this stuff, I'm talking about the same level of evidence and in the same tone of voice as I would give with like, if we were talking about, the Big Bang or whatever else. And it doesn't seem like you have a problem with those things unless you do. So why abiogenesis, and what is the particular issue that you're having with it, or with me talking about it?
Well, your evidence seems to be like, oh, we find amino acids in the space, or RNA can self-replicate. And you know what? RNA, there's only one specific sequence of RNA that can self-replicate in a laboratory. And it can only replicate itself because it's symmetrical. And as soon as it sequences an RNA that's not symmetrical, the process dies. They can only get it to happen like 3 or 4 times before it stops happening. So there's only one very specific sequence of RNA that can, but you kind of make it seem like any RNA, all RNA can self-replicate. No, it can't, dude. It's only one specific sequence.
So I said RNA can self-replicate. For me to say RNA can do anything at all would be a gross oversimplification if somebody were to say, okay, well then all RNA can do this thing that I said, because there's like 50 different kinds of RNA and they all do their own thing. So like, yeah, I would never sit here and say that like transfer RNA is capable of post-transcriptional gene regulation like that. No. That's microRNA that does that, which is a totally different small non-coding RNA versus the long non-coding RNAs that are a whole family that do these things. And like this. So yeah, when I say RNA can self-replicate, some things which are RNA can do that. And you talk about one specific sequence. As far as I know, it's more than that, but who knows? Maybe, let's say you're right. Let's say it is just one specific sequence that can do it. That is still demonstration that this thing can behave this way under natural circumstances, which means that there's ways to do this other ways potentially too. So like, again, you mentioned like seeing, amino acids in space. If I can find an amino acid, if I can find one amino acid in space, then that tells me a little bit about how these things can possibly self-assemble. It doesn't mean that we've seen every amino acid in the right chiral configuration, in the right way to become life. No, it just means that like, okay, we can see this thing and it does work. It just so happens we found over 500 amino acids, but like,
yeah, and that's
like that's what I'm saying.
But that's a bad thing, dude. Like,
it's a bad thing we found 500 amino acids when we only need 20 for life.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. When you have hundreds of amino acids all swimming around, but you only need 20 of them, what's to say that like any one of the other ones aren't going to sequence instead? I mean, and they're all racemic. I mean, when we need homochiral RNA or amino acids. I mean, if you have a pool of hundreds of different amino acids and you only need 20 of them and they all have to be left-handed, then, I mean, you're going to have kind of a problem, you know?
So the problem with what you're saying is that, like, yes, you do need the amino acids to be homochiral, and we do usually find them in race mixtures whenever we look up, when we find them in nature, we find them in space, whatever. However, there is a bias where they are predominantly left-handed, which is what we need for life. And so, like, we currently have several biotic and abiotic way. Well, that's not true. Even the abiotic ways require a scientist doing it. So we have several ways that we can resolve race mixtures of amino acids. And for those who don't know in the chat or whatever, that means that we can take a heterochiral mixture, a race mixture, and make them homochiral. We only have biotic ways to do that. We don't know of a consistent, reliable abiotic way to do that yet. But nature seems to, because we find these things more often than not, they are in the right configuration. It's not always, but there is definitely a bias. And what's more important is that, like, you talk about, wouldn't it be a problem if there's all these different amino? No, absolutely not. The ones that are present in life work. There's lots of different ways to have. A great example of this would be like pentadactyly, right? All tetrapods that have fingers have 5 of them, right? Except for, I guess, that's not true to say, because horses and shit, but like all things that have more than things have 5. A lot of shit has 5 fingers. There's no way I'm going to phrase that appropriately, but a lot of shit has 5 fingers. But if you go back a little while, that wasn't the case. There was a time when there were lots of different configurations of different digits on different limbs. And it just happens that the 5-finger configuration is what worked out and what stuck around. So when we talk about having like all these different amino acids, there's hundreds and hundreds of. Well, it just so happens that the just about 20, sometimes there's special circumstances where you can have a couple extra. So like up to 22 amino acids are the ones that worked out and are doing the job the way that we need. And I think that actually makes more sense chemically when we consider why amino acids form the proteins that they do and do the things that they do in nature. It's because of their tails that they behave the way they do. And so we only needed these 20 types of tails to do the stuff we needed. All these extra ones just aren't necessary, and so they're not biosynthesized. And so like that simply doesn't stack up to say the fact that there's more of them means that it's impossible. Like that doesn't make any logical sense to me.
I'm not saying. I mean, I wouldn't say impossible, but you have to admit that the odds of that happening. And I know there's, once we start discussing odds, it gets crazy. But the odds of those 20 amino acids. Like, tell me, what do you think about chiral induced spin selectivity? Do you think that has something to do with the? Oh, okay. Well, that's the thing.
I'm not educated on enough to speak.
All right. That's the thing that keeps our cells from bursting into flames and from friction or whatever. But anyway, that's one way that. But that has to happen inside of a cell. But that's just a way that we can make amino acids, or that's a way for a cell to select only left-handed amino acids. But yeah, I'm getting off track.
Yeah, I'm not educated on that topic enough to speak about it intelligently. I wouldn't have anything interesting to say, but I can say, like, I would just repeat what I said a minute ago. If that is a way, an abiotic way to produce homochiral left-handed amino acids, neat. Then that might be one of the ways it happened. I would want to see some actual data on whether or not that's possible or like reasonable to expect, or if indeed it works as well as it did. And then for sure, I would want to see some evidence pointing in that direction that is what happened, not just one of the ways that it could have.
Well, the fact remains that we're still light years away from achieving abiogenesis. I mean, light years. If I gave you all the parts of a cell, you wouldn't be able to put it together, and that's if I gave you all of it, including like topoisomerase and all the other complex biomolecules. If I gave them all to you, you wouldn't be able to put it together. Can I ask
you a question just then? First of all, that doesn't matter. But second of all, why did you pick topoisomerase out of all the possible enzymes? Why is that the one that you jumped to?
Well, because topoisomerase is extraordinarily complex. It took a supercomputer 1.5 years to sequence a topoisomerase molecule, and that molecule had to be that
The-
molecule had to be present the very first time DNA was ever replicated. That molecule had to have been present. So there's no chances of
That's
chemical
not necessarily
evolution
true.
creating this molecule.
That's not
And
necessarily
it's
true. But like the thing is, the issue is, the reason why I asked you why you picked that particular one is because it's a lot like whenever whenever a creationist says you can't prove evolution because of the bombardier beetle. Um, the
Mhm.
reason why that's something that's in your head, I would wager, is because that's the exact only molecule that people like Michael Behe and the Discovery Institute and I think James Tour and all these other people who are creationists like to point to this one thing that they don't have an explanation for, and it kind of just gets out there in the ether of like creationist talking points. And then no matter what, if we have all of the evidence for every other thing and it all makes sense. Yeah, but you don't know about the bombardier beetle. And it's like, well, number one, yes, we fucking do. But also, even if we didn't, why is that the hang? Or hummingbirds. That's another one that I get all the time. Well, you don't know how hummingbirds evolve. We don't have a fossil record for hummingbirds. We have a solid, amazing fossil record for whales. Why didn't you talk about them? It's because some fucking creationist said hummingbirds and it became popular. And so, like, I think with this, Topai Samare, say we don't know jack shit about it. Okay, that's not a reason to then implant magical thinking to account for just a pocket of ignorance.
We know a lot about it now, but yeah, I think the pistol shrimp is better.
Now.
I think the pistol shrimp is better, dude. It's so cool.
Right,
but
that's the thing. Even if we don't know shit about pistol shrimp, if we don't know shit about topaz, if we don't know anything about anything, completely throughout the entire theory of evolution, throughout everything we know about abiogenesis, completely start from scratch, you still have exactly as much evidence as you do right now for creationism, which is none. And so, like, just saying we don't understand XYZ thing doesn't really help, because X equals 0 is not the same thing as Y equals 1. You understand?
Well, until we can, but we have evidence of intelligent things creating complex things, codes and stuff.
Sure.
So we have evidence of intelligent things creating intelligent or creative things.
Right.
Or
Do we have evidence?
So,
do we have any evidence? Do we have any evidence of intelligent things creating life?
Well, no, not from scratch.
No. You just said several times that we're light years away from it, right?
That would be
so there's no reason. So then there's no reason. So that, right, and as you said, we're light years away from that. So there's no reason to assume that intelligence made life, because we have no examples of that whatsoever.
Well, do we have to? I mean, do we have to have an example of it to know for a fact that that's what happened?
Nope, we just need evidence, which is why we don't need an example of us making abiogenesis happen to know that it happened. We may be light years away from making a cell, but that doesn't mean that we don't know that it happened. Thank you very much, Billy.
But we
now agree.
But we have no evidence that nature can sequence a functional genome from scratch by natural
That doesn't
processes.
matter.
Matter of fact,
that doesn't matter.
Matter of fact,
because that's not what we were talking about.
We have evidence to the contrary, though.
Billy, we need to address what we have. Billy, don't just jump to the next point on your script. We need to address what we just established. We know that all 5 nitrogenous bases to make DNA or RNA do self-assemble. We find them in space. And we know that they polymerize and form oligoribonucleotides by themselves under natural conditions. And we know that at least some RNA can self-replicate. And we know that lots of different kinds of RNA can catalyze biochemical reactions, and also other kinds of RNA can be storage of genetic material. So, like, we don't need to have a complete sequence of a functional genome from scratch in front of us to know the individual pieces built together. In the same reason that we have not seen a whale evolve from an Indo-Hyas in front of our very eyes, but the pieces that we have of that history all point in that direction reliably, repeatably, and understandably. And so we don't need the whole thing. That's a ridiculous claim to make. As you just said, we just need evidence pointing in this direction. That's why you're claiming that there's a guy that made this stuff out, which doesn't make any fucking sense. And I'm claiming that the evidence that we have that shows that these things are natural means that other things are probably natural too.
So you can just make that leap? You can
nope,
do that?
It's not a leap.
Because I'm not allowed to do that.
It's not a leap. It's not a leap. My thought process here is that every single we can break down the entire thing from absolute Big Bang beginnings all the way up to the origins of humanity and me sitting here being stupid on the internet. Every single bit of that, we can break it down into 10 billion theoretical steps. And we don't have all of those steps. We don't know every single one of those steps. But every single one of the steps that we have, which is a fuckload, Billy, every single one of them is natural. Every single one of them is a naturalistic process. And therefore, it's not impossible that there's a supernatural explanation for one or two of them, but there's absolutely no reason for me to assume that that's the case. That would be a leap.
I have to correct something you said. You said that there are certain RNA molecules that can self-replicate. There's only one. Scientists
I know. You already said that earlier. It doesn't matter, Billy, because we already covered it. You're just jumping back to the script. We already covered that. We already went down that road.
But then why did you say that there are certain RNA molecules that can self-replicate? Because we already went down the road.
It's not that big. It's not that big of a deal. But if it's going to make you if it's going to make you feel better, we know of at least one. Is that better? I tweaked the language slightly, and the point is the exact same and means the exact same thing, and nobody is better for it. Like, can we keep up with what we're talking about here? It's not better. It doesn't make any sense to say that there may be something here that's supernatural, so there is, right?
I mean, I didn't say anything about supernatural. I just said intelligent. Like, the intelligence that's required to sequence the genome is unfucking believable, dude. Like, the amount of
intelligence you're talking about is a god.
I mean, I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's intelligent, whatever it is. And
is it outside of the universe? Is it more powerful than? Okay, so some guy. So some guy, let's not say supernatural. It's some fucking guy that's real smart, and he made this stuff because he's a super cool space wizard like that. Whatever, doesn't matter. The point is, we don't have any evidence, or I shouldn't even say evidence. We don't have any single demonstrated case of that guy doing anything in a way that we know for sure is that guy, nor do we have any single demonstrated case of that guy existing. So you have this guy that we don't know exists and we don't know can do anything. And you're saying that it's reasonable for us to implant his existence and utility and behavior in any pocket of ignorance you like. And meanwhile, I'm saying that every single thing we've ever seen has been natural. So probably the rest of it is too.
I never said any of the things that you just said. That was the hugest, most blatant straw man, bro, ever. And you
certainly was not. That's the case. It was facetious, but it wasn't a straw man.
I never said anything. I never said anything about a guy. In every facet of ignorance. I never said any of that shit, dude.
I said any Billy, facet of ignorance that you like. I didn't say every.
Yeah. Hey, Billy, I'm gonna sum up. I'm gonna sum up, Billy. I'm gonna sum up pretty much what your approach is to this whole thing. It's known as the argument from incredulity. You're basically hand waving at the. Wait. Yeah, this is ultimately your approach to this. You're hand waving. Hold on, Billy. Because you just explained it to me and I judged it. So you are basically saying. You don't get to do that. I actually get to do. I'm the host of the show. So what you're basically doing here is you are hand waving at complexity. You're hand waving. No, it's not. You're hand waving. I'm pointing out a flaw in your logic and in your reasoning. Okay. A straw man is where I basically point to a characteristic flaw and say you're all wrong.
Oh my God, Billy.
All right.
This is not your show, dude. You need to let the host explain something to you. Shut the fuck up and let Eric talk.
So what you're doing, Billy. Okay, Billy. So what you're doing is you're hand waving at complexity, you're hand waving at gaps in our knowledge, you're hand waving at the fact that we can't do certain things in the lab. And you're taking that information and going, based on this, I can't imagine how this came about naturally. Therefore, it did not come about naturally. That is a huge flaw in your logic. It's called the argument for incredulity. You are soothing your idea of this with two things. One is you said that we can't do this in the lab. And the second thing, which is what really stuck out to me, even though I'm not even a scientist, is that you say you were light years away from doing this. That is not true. You have no idea if that's the case or not. There's a brand new video over on Veritasium. No, you don't. So hold on here. There's a brand new video over on Veritasium. Billy, I'm going to mute you if you don't stop. Brand new video over on Veritasium. That's fine. I'm not talking to you at this point. I'm talking to the audience, so you're muted.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead
There's
and
a
mute him
brand
because
new
he just
video.
cannot behave himself.
Yeah. Hopefully it didn't unmute. Okay, there we go. All right, Billy, if you're still there and you're brave enough, listen, please.
No, he hung
Audience,
up.
this is okay. That's fine.
The dude literally could not handle not being able to just interject everything all the time. Billy, grow the fuck up and call back in sometime. We'll talk about this. Sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Anyway, aside from his argument for incredulity, the fact that Billy says, we have gaps and we have problems, therefore this is impossible, or therefore we are light years away, is patently false. Billy cannot possibly know that. And here's a counterexample to his light years away thing. Veritasium, amazing channel, by the way. You should go subscribe and watch it. Obviously, after this scream, don't bring our numbers down. But their latest video is called "The Most Useful Thing AI Has Ever Done." And it's talking about protein sequencing, which has huge ramifications on not just medicine and biology, but on things like handling pollution on our planet, breaking down plastics. Like, it's a cross-cutting discovery across all these things. Protein sequencing is very hard to do. It takes a lot of time. It's a lot of computational power. It used to be done by hand, I think, but it's mostly done by computers, outdated at this point, outdated algorithms. So to give you an idea of how much we've sequenced proteins over the last, I'm looking at the data right here on the video, over the last 30 years, we have sequenced about 100,000 proteins, a little shy of 100,000 proteins over 30 years, 30, 40 years of hard work by scientists and computers. There's a brand new thing, well, not brand new anymore. There's a brand new AI algorithm called AlphaFold 2. All right. Keep in mind, 30 years, we just are starting to approach 100,000 protein sequence. In 1 year, AlphaFold sequenced over 40 million. It blew away the human efforts in this because we had a good AI algorithm that did a lot of really cool things. And the video goes into it. It's fucking fascinating. But imagine before AlphaFold 2 got released, somebody said, well, we're never going to be able to sequel all these proteins because we're light years away from doing this. And all of a sudden, a technology comes out of the blue and just blows the human computations out of the water and does all this work for us. Billy has no idea what's going to come out tomorrow. Billy has no idea what scientific discoveries were going to happen tomorrow. And he's sitting there with his argument of incredulity, and he's saying to himself, well, I know the capabilities of scientists. I know what they can and can't do. And I know what's impossible and impossible. Billy, you don't. You're just trying to force your conclusion, and you're finding whatever means necessary to do it. I didn't understand half the conversation between you and Forrest, but I can still look at it and go, I see problems with your arguments. I see problems with your logic. And that's exactly what you're doing.
The entire argument was just like Billy was regurgitating what a lot of apologists and creationists will say, which is so chirality. When we talk about that, there's just an example, right? So when you have an organic molecule, a carbon-based molecule, and it has one carbon has 4 bonding sites. It can have 4 bonds, right? When each one of those 4 bonds is a different thing, it's called chiral. So it's a chiral molecule now. And so what that means is the order in which those different things are around the molecule will make the molecule behave in different ways. A great way to think about that is your hands. When we talk about left and right-handed molecules, right? My hands can superimpose on each other. They can look the same on top, but they are functionally different, and they're going to behave like they're, so like that's a way to think about it. With these chiral molecules, a great example from a long time ago was thalidomide, was this drug that was used to treat morning sickness. But one chiral molecule, one of the what we call enantiomers. So one enantiomer, the right-handed or left-handed sequence of this molecule or form. One form of this molecule treated morning sickness. The other form of this molecule caused significant birth defects. And so you can look up thalidomide babies and you'll see these people who were born without limbs or whatever because their parents cured their morning sickness with this stuff.
Wow.
And so what we need to do is if we have a racemic mixture, which means a mixture of both left and right-handed enantiomers of the same molecule, then we need to resolve that mixture in order to make it homochiral, to make sure there's only one chirality, only one form, either a left or right-handed form of this molecule present, to make sure the drug does only what we want it to do and not some other fucking thing. And we have only biotic ways to do that. We can do that through enzyme reactions. We can do that through condensation. We can crystallize the molecule and literally sort it by hand. We can do like precipitation, all sorts of different ways we can do this, but it takes people or organic molecules to do it. We don't have an abiotic way to make that happen yet. And so when we talk about amino acids are chiral. It is literally one carbon atom. It's got an amine group on one side. It's got a carboxylic acid group on the other side. It's got a hydrogen up here, and it's got some weird shit down in the bottom. The fourth group is a bunch of variation, a bunch of whatevers, and that's each different type of amino acid has a different, what we call a side chain or a tail, this long thing that is whatever the fuck it is. And so each different amino acid has a different side chain, this different whatever the fourth thing is. And so they're all, except for one, chiral. One of them has another hydrogen, so it's not chiral. I think it's glycine, if I remember right. And so all these hundreds of amino acids we found are all chiral molecules. And in order to work in life, in order to build proteins that make us, they have to be all left-handed. They have to be homochiral. And we don't know a way to make amino acids homochiral abiotically yet. We don't. But as we talked about with the call with Billy, nature seems to have an idea, because when we find amino acids, they are more often than not left-handed. And so, like, there is clearly some sort of way to do that. We just don't know it yet. And there's a few ideas, a few hypotheses of how that can work. Billy mentioned one that I'm not familiar with. But that's the long and short of like the reason why Billy's argument is so frustrating is that he's literally taking this very common creationist talking point. Okay, well, I know that we know where the atoms that make amino acids come from. I know that they self-assemble into the basic things quite commonly. I know that they self-assemble into amino acids by themselves. And I know that when they are proteins, that they behave the way that they do based on totally natural laws. And I know that to get to proteins is a naturalistic process. And I know that the initial elongation of amino acids into simple peptides is a naturalistic process. But right here in the very center of all of that is this one single thing, getting the amino acids all shaped the right way. We know where they come from. We know every step up to where we get to amino acids. We know every step from homochiral amino acids all the way up to being a protein. But this one part here, we're talking about this, we don't know yet, which means we are light years away from abiogenesis, and some fucking guy did it. And then you're going to accuse me of making a leap. What's frustrating about it, like with the example I was going to give before Billy bitched out, was that like if I have like a bag of marbles, a big bag here, and I pull a blue marble out and a blue marble out and a blue marble out and a blue, and for hundreds of years, blue, 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 blue. At a certain point, it's possible that the next one's going to be a ferret, but it's probably going to be a motherfucking blue marble. And so, like, if we look out in nature and we're doing this science and we continue over and over, natural process, natural process, natural process, and at no point have we ever even come close to saying, actually, some guy did it. It was just some guy. It was some fucking guy. And he just did it. And we don't know why. Never, ever have we even come within an inch of doing it. We are light years away from some guy being the explanation. There's a certain point where you can be like, you know what? It's probably going to be a natural process. And until we have a reason to think otherwise, it's not a leap. It is a very safe and fair assumption to say. Anyway, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
To rag on Billy a little bit more because he deserves it. So like 100 years ago, 150 years ago, when this new science was just discovered, okay, let's just quantify all the stuff you talked about. Let's say that there are 100 things to consider when you're talking about abiogenesis. Let's say we started 150 years ago. The exact numbers don't matter. It's just an illustration. Somebody back then pointed at all 100 unknown things and said, God. And then a scientist came by who said, no, wait, let's investigate. And they eliminated one of those things. One of those things became a natural explanation. And then some other religious person came by and said, that one's natural, but all the other 99, God. And now here's Billy 100-something years later, and we have vanishingly few items left as unknowns. and they're all natural. And here's Billy going, God, like Billy doesn't understand that he is just the next person in line in a train of incredulity. It's so frustrating. This is like Christians in the first century going, Jesus will be back any day now. We have Christians here in the 21st century. Jesus will be back any day now. Nothing changes. It's so frustrating. And it's okay, Billy. And Billy, I'm talking to you now again. It's okay that you are attached to your beliefs. It's okay that you find some type of value in them, but look at things honestly and drop the attitude, because we are trying to have we're trying to have a conversation with you. I think we were respectful up until you started getting belligerent with us. Like, we were taking you seriously. Like, you're not going to convince us acting like that, but you are going to help us convince a bunch of people in the audience that you are not on the right track there. If you think you did something helpful here, you definitely didn't. I can guarantee you.
Like, just locking down on, well, you said some RNA, but I'm saying it's only one. And now we're talking about that instead of like the whole fucking monologue of reason that we just talked about.
Yeah.
And then just it's over and over, just like fucking reason for thee, but not for me. It's so frustrating. Oh, and also to the person in the chat, I don't know why you got muted, but I saw the last thing that finally ticked over where you were saying, I wonder what other monomers could create life besides amino acids. Nucleic acids, fatty acids, and sugars. Those are the monomers that make the other 3 macromolecules that make life. This shit works, so it does. So it's not like amino acids are this one singular special thing. There are 4 major macromolecules of life. They are all made of monomers, and they work because of the way. Like, I don't know how to break this down any further. Like, there's no special pleading here. And what's so frustrating is like what you were just talking about, Eric, where it's like, no, actually, it's God. Is that's always how it is with creationists? Is that you don't know how this works. We don't have an answer for this. That means it's God. And then the second we do have an answer for it, it's so complicated. That means it's God. It was that way with DNA. We don't know. How is it that birds just know how to be birds and bears know how to be bears? Actually, it's DNA. DNA is so complex, it must be a God that made it. Meanwhile, before then, it's God's creating these things. God's making sure. Yeah. God knows you in the womb and forms you. There's no way that could happen otherwise. Actually, there's this shit called DNA, and then there's these developmental pathways, and that's how it works. God did that. That's how it is. It's just, we talked to, I believe it was Catherine, I think it was, about like that is the post hoc immunizing hypothesis. That is what that is. You are immunizing your claim against rationality and reason by deciding that no matter what comes next, this will be the way that it is interpreted. And it sucks, man.
Yeah. So, okay. Oh, and finally, learn what an ad hom is. And a straw man is there, Billy?
Oh my gosh.
Seriously. Me saying there's a problem with your logic is not an ad hom, okay?
It's not.
There's a problem in your logic, and therefore your conclusion is indeterminate. That's not an ad hom, okay, Billy?
If I could have, you were talking about if you could wave a magic wand and get one wish, you'd get rid of religion. My one wish would be that fucking people who debate shit on the internet learn what a motherfucking ad hominem is. Because it's not any time you are criticized or any time you are insulted or any time anybody's mean to you. It is an insult in place of an argument. If you make an insult as an argument, that is an ad hominem. If we insult you along with the argument or instead just by itself and there is no argument, that's not an ad hominem. I'm not saying you are wrong because you are ignorant. I'm saying you are wrong and ignorant. That is not an ad hominem attack. Just learn what things are, y'all. Please.
You're wrong because you're an idiot is an ad hom. You're wrong and you're an idiot is not an ad hom.
Is not.
But I didn't call you an idiot. I was respectful and I was calm up until you started saying, "Oh, that's a fallacy." Like, get real, dude. Just let me talk. Let me explain to you what the incredulity fallacy is. And
literally.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
No, he hung up because he couldn't handle the fact that we were just going to talk for a second. That tells me everything I need to know about Billy's claims.
I think what really got my goat is when he declared that we're light years away from this. And it's like, no, you have no clue what's going to happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
AI is doing so much for us. Like it's doing a lot of bad stuff for us. But man, when it came to like scientific discovery, like, holy shit, AI is going to revolutionize a lot of stuff. And it already has. Like, Billy basically has a crystal ball, and he's like, "I can see into the future," and it's like, "No, you don't."
No, you don't understand.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's a straw man.
complaining.
See, that was a silly little joke he made. That was a funny thing that he said. That's what you know. Fuck.
Okay, let's stop complaining. We're better than this, Forrest. We're better than this. We let our emotions get to us, Forrest. Maybe you're true, but don't tell the audience that. They can't know.
Right.
All right.
Eric, do you want to learn how to Mongolian throat sing? Check this out.
No,
you try.
No, keep that shit to yourself. Don't hear it.
Anyway, thanks for watching that clip. Patreon.com/calltheline is where you could support us. And maybe you should subscribe and like the video because it was a killer video. Or maybe it wasn't. Was it a Forrest video? If this was a Forrest video, you don't have to click like. If it was an Eric video, go ahead and click dislike.